Welcome. Happy Friday. Dee's got to get her clap in there.
It helps with the editing.
Let's do a Celsius clap. Ready? 1, 2.
Cheers.
Pretty good.
Happy
Cheers.
Friday. I'm tired.
Grab yourself a Celsius, a coffee, a water, a breath of air, whatever you want.
It's chilly in Dallas today. It's a frigid 20-something degrees, so...
It was 19 when we woke up this morning.
19.
We are from Florida, so we're not used to this kind of stuff.
These little Floridians are
Yesterday,
freezing.
I had these little pin needles going into my skin. I had no idea what it was. It was the air.
It was just the outside air. So today we are going to talk about communication. And we're going to talk about...
Sorry, what did you just say?
Take two.
Communication is not just speaking, it's also listening.
We
it's
are
a two-way road.
going to talk about communication in relationships, and we're going to talk about communication with Jesus, because you need all of them. You need communication with your partner, with your spouse, with someone you're dating, your friends, your family, and we need to know how to talk to Jesus. Okay, so we're going to kick it off.
Well, kick it off. First piece of relationship advice or communication advice is, if you're not talking to Jesus, do not go talk to somebody in a relationship, because you won't know what to do.
That's good advice.
Hey, look at that. Check. Number 1.
Yes, you have to pursue someone who pursues Jesus more than you, and who talks to Jesus more than you. But yeah, that's very, very important. Do not be unevenly yoked. Do not date someone who does not have the love of Jesus like you do, and then expect them to all of a sudden step up and be, you know, this spiritual leader powerhouse, and be really disappointed when they're not. You have to know what you're getting into right off the bat. So let's start with communication in relationships. What you need and what they need, basically, is what we can kind of focus on.
Oh, boy. I think when it comes to that, it's funny because Dee and I both have a counselor. He's the same person. His name's Brian. He's phenomenal. It took us 8 years to realize that we accepted each other and how they communicated, but we actually didn't work through how to actually communicate well together. So I think one of the first hurdles you have to jump over of figuring out, like, what do they need versus what do you need, is figuring out that you are different, and like accepting the fact that you're different and not trying to change the way they communicate, but trying to understand how they communicate. Because we figured out really quickly in our relationship that I wanted to communicate everything. If I woke up from a bad dream,
every feeling,
I took it out on Dee.
Every emotion.
It was her fault that whatever happened in the dream happened. If I thought a thought that I maybe didn't want to think or shouldn't have been thinking, I would share it with her and be like, I don't know why I was just thinking about this. Or if I had a weird dream of like... Can
we tell the podcast? One time... Myles had a dream that he was...
One time is the key there.
Making out with an old lady. Old lady. And told me about it. And I'm like, there's some information I don't need to know. That doesn't need to be communicated. Now, I love your heart that you just want to be so transparent and open and honest. We have a very open and honest relationship. However, you may not need to share every single thought that flies through your head with your partner, especially if you start to realize like they can't handle it. Or if you start to realize like this is actually causing an insecurity, or this is, why do we keep fighting about the same stuff? Well, what are you sharing? What information are you putting out there to your partner, whether it's about your own thoughts, your own fears, your own worries about the relationship, or about them? What are you kind of projecting onto them that's making them then retreat a little bit and go, I don't know how I feel about this.
Yeah. I think there's like a learning and adapting process, or stage, I guess you could say, like in the midst of any relationship, is like after I shared that dream with you, I had to realize, oh, you know what? I think not everything is necessary to share. Like obviously there are a lot of things and most things that are necessary to share, but the things that are not necessary to say are necessary not to say them. I learned that actually through somebody who was teaching me some stuff about MLM way back in the day. But it was actually a great piece of advice. If it's not necessary to say it, it's necessary to not say it. I think that's really important to learn, especially in a relationship. Because when you care about the other person and you truly say, I care about them more than I care about myself, then I should long to try to please her and figure out how she needs to be communicated to, rather than me just expect her to get on my level of how I like to communicate. We probably would have gotten into some pretty bad fights if she communicated the exact same way I did, because I was sharing everything that was on my mind. If she did that, who knows? It would have been like throwing 2 live grenades into a relationship. So
you have to be thankful for the fact that more than most likely, and there are those couples out there where it's like, sometimes it's different, but more than not, you have 2 people in a relationship that are pretty opposite in their communication styles. Not opposite completely in personalities. Myles and I are both extroverted. We're both, we both have a lot in common in personality wise, but there are ways that we communicate and we process differently. He is an external processor and thinker,
are you kidding
and
me?
It comes to his mind and he says it, and he loves to throw things at me and ideas, and he loves to write things down, and I'm internal, and I'm like, I think about it and I sit on it and I plan in my mind first, and I get all my ducks in a row, and so that even in itself is very different in communication. So when we're trying to, and it doesn't always have to be conflict, it could be anything, but if he's like, okay, we got to talk about everything right now, and I'm just not ready because I haven't processed it and I haven't dealt with it and I haven't figured out how I want to move forward, then I actually feel attacked. Like, wait, you're not respecting my process, my space, my mind. And he's saying, well, you don't respect me because you're not even willing to talk to me. And so it's really understanding, how not only the other person communicates and processes, but then figuring out what as a couple works for you to say, okay, well, it doesn't mean Dee doesn't want to talk about it right away, so we're just never going to talk about it. We put the boundary on the relationship of, okay, how long do we let this sit?
Yeah.
When are we going to revisit it? We have to set time aside to make sure that this is worked out and talked about and dealt with. We have to get it on the calendar or whatever we have to do, but we have to make it a priority to make it work. You know what I mean? And to effectively communicate with each other, because so often in relationships when we're counseling people or just
preach, baby,
or just hearing each other or hearing people, we hear that they feel like, well, it should be one way or the other. And it's like, no, you have to find the compromise and you have to find the balance and you have to find what works best for the relationship itself.
Things change too. There's different seasons in relationships, there's different seasons in your life. If you ever took the love languages test, where it's there's, 5 love languages? There's these different ways that you like to be loved and you like to show your love, but what you also realize is 5 years later, they shift even in your life, the way that you want to be loved. I didn't really need words of affirmation because I loved physical touch and quality time. And then later on in life, in a place of inadequacy, oh, thanks, babe, you long for the words of affirmation or the acts of service or whatever it is, and you don't realize that shift happens. But I say that because, you want to get on the same level of communication, or you're over here and this person's over here, but in a different season, it might flip. So you can't get mad at that person for communicating that way, because there's going to be moments where I need space, where I don't normally want it or need it. I know that there are moments when I do want it or need it, or want to separate myself just for a moment to gather my thoughts and all that kind of stuff, which, is healthy sometimes. But for people that are in a relationship, maybe outside of marriage, because it's a little different when you live in the same house and share a bed. Actually, maybe it's not. But how long is too long to go after you have a fight and it's heavy stuff? It's not just you didn't put the dishes away again, or you forgot to put the toilet seat down. Because I don't know what man out there forgets to put the toilet seat down.
This is a fun new thing that you developed after almost 10 years of marriage. All of a sudden, he doesn't put the toilet seat down. And I'm like, what? Why?
Dee never puts the toilet seat up. Just saying.
You live in a house with 3 girls.
That's 3 of you that get to put it down and only 1 putting it up. So that's really good.
Don't twist it.
Just saying.
Don't even do that.
But anyways, how much time is okay? And then how much time do people need to know maybe I'm putting too much distance between me and either it's a boyfriend, girlfriend, or a husband or wife. You know what I mean?
I highly advise to not go to sleep angry.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
And to not go to bed. Isn't there a scripture? Find it.
Do not let the sun go down on your anger.
And I I do feel like that's they're all valid scriptures, but I feel like that is so applicable because you have the one person who I almost feel like will reset overnight and they'll wake up and they'll be like, okay, like we're over it. And it's like, no, you're not. You haven't dealt with anything. And then you have the other person who wakes up and they're more mad and they're like, now I have 12 more hours. No one gets 12 hours of sleep. Now I have 6 more hours of just festering. But it's like when you go to bed without resolving things, even if it is a small argument or whatever, it's basically saying like, I'm not going to put the energy or the effort or the priority to make sure like we're okay before we like kind of go our separate ways. You know what I mean? Whether you are married or not, just making sure that you don't have to spend a whole day, not speaking. I have known people and talked to people, whatever, that would go days living together, not speaking to each other, literally passing by each other in the kitchen, not saying a word. And if you feel that that's the best way to win in your marriage or your relationship is to like dig your heels in and say, I'm going to be the one that gets my way, that stands my ground. And we've talked about it before, like learn some humility and lay down your weapons because you're not winning.
You don't even know love at that point. True love, or the greatest love, is to lay down one's life for your friends. Jesus, when he teaches that, it's in, I think, John 15 or Matthew 15, I think John 15, he teaches us literally the greatest love is to lay down your life for one's friends. He doesn't even say for your spouse. He doesn't say for your husband or for your wife, for your friends is the greatest love. So here we are married, and to be able to walk by each other in anger and hold things in, I would actually venture to say that you struggle to even know how to love one another. It's easy to love when things it's easy to love when things are going well because they're going well.
Yeah.
What happens when things are not going well? How do you love? You don't even learn how to show love or show grace until there's an opportunity to show it. And I think that's really important. And honestly, like anybody that ever has this prayer, and we should all have this prayer as believers, make me more like Jesus. Like Scripture said, imitate the Father, imitate God as beloved children. And I think that's really important. Like I'm constantly asking the Lord, I want to be more like you, Jesus, not for my own glory or not for anything weird. I just want to be more like my dad. Like I want to be more like my father, And I think if we carry that same prayer into a relationship, I think we could see what it would actually look like to love one another, and what it actually look like to give grace and mercy and kindness and compassion. And go study the fruits of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. If those things are not showing up in a marriage or even in a relationship, then it's not a Spirit-filled or Spirit-led marriage. And that's a dangerous place to be as a believer, because we can look good and praise on a Sunday, but have an unhealthy marriage? Nah, the fruit of the Spirit, it has to show up there. The Word even gives us requirements of what it looks like to be in leadership and ministry. And it's the husband of one wife. And basically it says that if you can't even lead your own home, you are not fit to lead others.
Wow.
So as a husband or a wife, like if you are not fit to love or lead your spouse, then you're not fit to lead other people. Like don't ask for ministry if you can't do that at home. You hear it all the time. And it's like this catchy phrase, but it's your first ministry. But it's the truth.
But it is, and it should be. And it's the best place to learn how to truly unconditionally love and give grace and give mercy, because you do just have that ridiculous,
sorry, the Celsius hiccup.
You just do have that love for each other. So it does make it a little bit easier, but it also gets more frustrating at times because you are so just entangled with this person in their life. But it's so true. Like if you can't communicate well to someone that you have said, I would lay down my life for you. I've given you everything. I'll like be with you forever. I'll have your children. If we can't communicate well with them, how are you going to communicate well with anyone you want to lead, anyone else in your life? If you're even in, the marketplace or friends or school or whatever, like how could you do anything else well if you can't even love and communicate effectively with,
it's true,
your family, the people that are everything next to Jesus. And so I do think it's super, super important to not only understand, and a lot of times we do understand what we need as, I, as a wife, to a degree, and it's ever changing, depending on my mood and the kids' mood and whatever. But I understand what I need, especially with communication. I still, to this day, and guess what today is? Today is our 10-year engagement anniversary.
We did it, babe.
He asked me to marry him 10 years ago.
She's
and 11 years
yes.
ago, he kissed me for the first time. Anyway, we won't go.
It was a great kiss.
It was a very good kiss.
We'll have a 12-hour episode
anyway,
about that first kiss.
It was wonderful. It was wonderful. Sparks flew, and it was wonderful. But anyway, so what was I saying?
You can't even think straight. Look at you now. She's blushing.
What was I talking about?
Well, you're talking about... Yes.
To this, what was I saying?
I don't know, but I was going to go off of something else. You said, "How can you do anything if you can't get that right?"
Right.
And I think of the house being like a sending place. That's actually what we want our church to be, the Freedom House. We want it to be a sending place. But like when you go out, like for the day, like how you started your day here or how you ended your night before, like I think it really plays a huge role. Like it needs to be the place of rest, of comfort, of love, of joy, peace. Like that, it needs to be a place of Jesus to be with you. But like if you can't get that right, it's really hard to go out from a bad, unhealthy place and think that you can go operate in a healthy place.
I do remember what I was going to say.
Go.
So 10 years later, even to this day, I still know that I need to hear Myles tell me how much he loves me. I need to hear why he loves me. And that's ever changing because when I became a mother, I think you fell more in love with me because of that. So there are times when I will literally say, like we're dating, like, why do you love me? But I'll say like, what do you love about me? And I put him on the spot and he answers and it's wonderful. And it just like fills my soul and it doesn't take away the thought behind it of like, oh, he didn't just say this on his own. It's like, it doesn't matter. It's in his heart and he's sharing it with me and that's all that matters. And so I still need to hear that. I need acts of service for sure as one of my love languages, but I need him to communicate to me, hey, what do you need me to do? Like, what's going to help you? What's going to help you feel like a little less stressed out or whatever? Myles has this amazing thing that I have finally started to do where if I do something to upset him and I need to apologize, if I say like this, Myles, I'm so sorry. I should not have done that to you. It means nothing. Okay.
Well,
it
rarely,
is null and void.
Rarely does it ever happen that beautifully because that sounded heartfelt. If she's like, I'm sorry.
However, if I do this, and for those of you actually listening to the podcast, not watching, if I actually touch him, his arm, rub his back, play with his hair, if I look at him in the same exact way, Myles, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have done that.
Man, it just feels so right.
100%, I'm forgiven. He has, for whatever reason, that's how I have to communicate to him because I think it means I'm giving you all my attention, all my affection. It's genuine.
There you go. It's genuine. It's not
It's always genuine.
No.
Just because I'm touching your arm doesn't make it not genuine.
Look, if somebody says sorry for doing something and the next day they do it again and they say sorry again, it doesn't feel genuine. But when I feel like I have like oh wow, this actually hurt him, I need to touch somehow to tell him I'm so sorry for hurting your feelings. So anyways, that's why.
I have learned what I need. Myles has learned what he needs. I've communicated to him what I need. He's communicated to me what I need. And again, we rehab those conversations when it changes. And it's this always growing and adapting thing. So communication is not just, once you have it figured out, you're good to go and you have it figured out forever. It will constantly be changing. And that's good. We should constantly be changing and growing closer to Jesus and getting better and better and better.
I think so too. All right.
I have a question.
I have a question too.
This will transition us, I think.
What if we had the same question?
It's
that would be
probably not. We never think the same thing. What do you suggest for, especially for like dating, married, whatever, couples? What's like some of the best advice for them to communicate with Jesus? Together, separate, both, all the above? Like, what do you...
All right, well, I'll give you the first piece of advice. It's free. Couples that pray together, lay together. Okay? Many times I've heard of couples that were dating.
Now,
Listen,
explain what pray together means, though.
Look.
Because you can't say, like, don't pray for your boyfriend.
No. Pray for and praying with and together in a bedroom are two different things. And it happens, hey, I just want to pray with you. I really want to seek the Lord with you. Now you get intimate with the Lord and with each other in a room. Things are bound to happen when spiritual sparks start flying and you can't control yourself. Anyways, so I've heard many couples that were dating, we were just praying together in the room, and next thing you know, they slept together. So it happens. So anyways, I'll just give you that advice. But I tell people this, and I may have said this on a podcast before, I can't remember. But when you are in a relationship, especially dating, because you don't know if it's going to end or if it's going to stay, is this going to go to marriage or is it not? We're just figuring it out, whatever. Your question should always be, am I or did I bring that person closer to Jesus while we were together? And if you don't pray for them, then you probably don't fully care about if they get closer to Jesus or not. You just care more about if they're getting closer to you or not. So do you care more about your own communication with each other than you do the communication between you and Jesus? And I think that's really, really important, because the word says that the will of God in 1 Thessalonians says to pray without ceasing, like to literally pray without stopping. Like that's the kind of communication Jesus wants with us, is never ending. And like, I feel that even with Dee. Like literally we were in a coffee shop yesterday. I was meeting with a guy. She was meeting with a girl. We're in two separate booths. And like, I love being so close to her that I'm like, I kind of wish she was even closer, like we can be talking. And I feel like she came after her and she said the same exact thing. But that's how Jesus is with us. Like, he didn't die for us to have some distant relationship or one where we only talk to him once a week or once a day even, but regularly throughout the day. So if Jesus himself designed us, formed us, made us to be in a relationship like that,
right?
And he is the head of the husband, the husband's the head of the wife, then I wonder what kind of communication relationship did he design us to be in with each other? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Because so much of everything that Jesus did for his bride, I feel like is just paralleled and modeled in our relationships here. And we talk about, it's so easy just to kind of do that comparison thing to see like, oh yeah, like I wouldn't do this to my husband. So clearly I'm not going to do this to Jesus. I'm not going to not talk to him for 5 days. But that is really beautiful to think about, that like he intended that for marriage and for like that kind of communication.
All right. I'm on for my question now.
Okay.
They're a little bit different, a lot of it different. Okay.
Our questions are different?
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, I figured.
Definitely, because we communicate differently. What are some red flags within communication, whether it's dating or a marriage, that if this is happening within a marriage, it'll be a different result, obviously, because you might have to go to counseling or friendship or whatever. But dating specifically, what are red flags to be like, whoa, if this is happening, like it's opening my eyes to see like maybe this is not it or this is not right.
Okay, so we should do a podcast one day on core fears. We have to talk about core fears one day.
Explain really quick. What are they?
So basically, because of life circumstances, because of our upbringing, because of trauma we've been through, because of past relationships, whatever, because of different situations, a core fear or 2 or 3 is placed in our heart that we put there. It's not from the Lord, that we basically use as a filter. And everything we hear from people go through our filter of what our core fear is. I will be open and honest with you. For a long time, mine was rejection. Dealt with that, got some deliverance, healing, counseling. Now
I never reject her.
No, he didn't. Now it's more, I hate being invalidated. I hate it. We will literally, our next podcast, we will do core fears. We will have them listed out. It'll actually be very, very good for you to understand not only what yours is, but what your partner's is as well. So when you have that core fear, it's not only your filter of how you hear things, but it becomes it's when you get most defensive. I feel super invalidated, so I'm going to do whatever my defense mechanism is. I'm going to shut down. I'm going to lash out. I'm going to sabotage, whatever it is, however your defense mechanism is. So that's something to be very aware of. However, I've seen people understand core fears, and I've seen them abuse core fears because now they understand. So for example, if someone says, I just feel like defective, like I feel like everything I do is wrong. Is that the truth? No, it's how that person feels. So now if their partner comes to them and says like, hey, you did this to hurt me. And they're like, I know, I'm so defective. And that's their crutch and it's like, no, that's not how we're going to use it. Mm-mm. But if you have a partner that is constantly coming at you and constantly telling you all the things that you need to change and constantly saying, and it starts very small, like, why are you, this is for whatever reason, a very cookie cutter one with men, like what you'll see in the cycle of abuse with men is they start to control the things that you wear. That doesn't mean they can't have a preference or they can't like certain things or they want you to dress more modern. Like that's not what that means. But it starts to be like throwing out your clothes and picking at your clothes. It starts very small. Don't cut your hair. Don't eat that. These like controlling things. But if you start to see these, and this goes for guys too, if your girlfriend, your partner, whatever, is constantly telling you all the things that you're doing wrong and is not loving you and bringing out the good things in you.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can have that conversation of correction and stuff like that. And you can say like, hey, like, again, when you do this hurts me, but it's not an attack on you and your personality and your character.
Yeah.
So a huge red flag is, am I getting more negative, like correction, quote unquote, or like insults or things that they don't like about me? Or is this person like constantly just like encouraging and loving and like empowering me and believing in me and championing me? And you can have someone that does that and still corrects you in a place of love, and it feels like, okay, I don't feel attacked.
Yeah.
But then when you have the other thing where you never feel good enough, if you do not feel good enough in a relationship, you first have to look internally. Are you struggling with an insecurity issue? And then you have to look at the transcripts of what is your partner saying to you that's feeding into the insecurity or that's trying to fight it. That was a lot.
I'm married to a licensed mental health counselor, so as you can imagine.
What's a red flag for you?
Well, I was going to talk now about the white flag. Yeah.
No red flags?
I think it all can be red flags if they're not avoided. I just want to give some advice. So the way I see like the core fears is it's what you're trying to protect yourself from happening to you. So if it's rejection, you put up walls around yourself to protect yourself from that core fear. If you don't want to be rejected, you put up walls. What happens in a relationship, though, is you already come in with the core fears. It's not like they just develop through that relationship. Maybe they do, and then you get into a new relationship and you have them.
Yeah, but you have one.
But you have something that you are trying to protect yourself from. So when you are in a relationship with somebody and you have those walls up, you are now entering into a vulnerable place where you are waving your white flag when you have an issue, inviting the other person to come in beyond the walls to help you, okay? So the way that I see true, like, godly, loving communication is God always went for the lost sheep. He didn't wait for the lost sheep to come to him. And I think that's really important in a relationship to understand that Jesus came to seek and save the lost. Again, everything is about being like Jesus. You can't separate Jesus and then relationships. We only know relationships because he created us to be in them. But if you were on the outside, so if Dee is struggling with a fear of rejection with me or with anything, and I see her waving the white flag, anytime she would mention like, I feel like I'm being rejected, that's her waving the white flag. In an unhealthy relationship, I am going to do whatever I can to get her out of that place. Like I'll try to correct her. I'll try to figure out deeper what's going on, when really the white flag is her waving to say, can you come in and just like, can you be, this is a vulnerable place with me. So I think true, like, godly love is not pulling somebody out, but actually going into where they are,
that's so beautiful.
To love them where they are, not pulling them out. Because a lot of times in relationships, you see it. Everybody's trying to correct the other one or change the other one to be with them outside of their walls, but they can't get out of those walls unless you go in and get them. And I think that's really important to recognize and understand like the roles of communication in a relationship. Yeah. So I've heard it said before, it's like, who's the first one to the cross? You know what I mean? Like that was the way of like resolving issues or fights. honestly, when somebody is struggling, like, you got to be the first one to the cross. Like, don't go in pridefully saying like, well, she's doing this or he's doing that, so it's making me feel this way. If they're struggling with anything, even if you are struggling with something, dude, lay it down. Like, this is an act of sacrifice and love. Again, the greatest love is that one would lay down their own life for their friends. So anyways, obviously communication's easy when things are good, but whenever there's conflict and fights and issues and hurdles that you can't seem to get over, you got to get under before you go over. What? You got to go into the walls and help that person out before you just expect them to come out and be changed.
It's necessary to be vulnerable. It's necessary to be consistent. It's necessary to be compassionate, and it's necessary to be selfless in everything when it comes to communication. And the second you say like, okay, I can be most of those things, but I can't be vulnerable, it's not going to work, because it's going to cap out at some point.
Yeah.
Because I'll never forget one of Myles is, I don't know if it's still your core fear. It used to be being belittled. Is it still?
I feel belittled right now, actually. Yeah, that or controlled.
Oh yeah, you don't like being controlled.
Like,
he does not like being controlled.
Did you all see me leaning forward here a couple of times, and she would come here and push me back? I'm like, yo, just ask me nicely.
Listen, okay?
I don't like being told what I have to do. I like being asked to be given.
Tell you to do
I just mean in anything.
No, so anyway, for a while there
it.
was one that was being belittled, and I remember the first time, and it's not natural communication to say like, hey, I feel belittled right now. Like, it's vulnerable. It's a little bit, it feels embarrassing. It's not just a natural way to just communicate. And he literally, like, I'll never forget, you were sitting on like the arm of the couch in our old house. And I had in that moment an instant where there was a tiny part of me, because I'm a little bit crazy, where I felt like I could destroy him. Like, guys, how horrible is that?
Dang, I don't know this.
Because I never told you before. But
I'm glad you didn't
in
destroy
that
me.
moment, because we were fighting and I wanted to win, which we always say, if you win, you really lose in a marriage. If you're saying, oh, I won the fight. No, you didn't. You lost. But I felt in that moment like, oh, you feel belittled? Well, how about, and I could have just went at it. But I literally just saw him just sitting there waiting. Like, I am basically exposed here. And you can either like drive the peg through my heart.
Wow, this is getting deep.
I don't remember why you made me so mad that day.
No wonder. Dee's quiet all the time. She's processing
how
to kill me.
No, I could either completely like cut you to the core, or I could use this could be an incredibly healing moment for us. And I believe it was, because I was like, that was not my intention. And it wasn't. I never wanted to make him feel less than in any way. And it was exactly that. He waved the white flag and he's like, I could sit here and fight all night, but instead I'm going to open up. So you have to be vulnerable, men and women. You have to be consistent. You have to be balanced, where we talked, how Myles was saying earlier, like, I told her every thought that ever came through my head. And so we sat down and I was like, hey, let's find a good, happy medium of you being very honest with me and telling me all the things, but not all the things like that I don't need to know. That doesn't mean keep secrets. That doesn't mean hide your past, nothing like that. But saying like, I don't need to know every fleeting thought through your head, because they're fleeting and it might mean absolutely nothing. If it's something that's in your heart and it's something you can't deal with and you're trying to, of course, come to me, even if it hurts, and we'll get through it. But so you have to have the vulnerability, the consistency, the balance, and just like the selflessness. You have to understand what your person needs. And if it's not enough for you to compromise and adapt and find the ways to be vulnerable and balanced, if it's not worth it to you, then that relationship is not worth it to you, and you need to let that person go. Because that's just communication. Just wait until you actually give your whole life to that person. Like, if you think communication's hard,
wow,
that's step one.
I would say homework for people right now. No matter what relationship you're in, this could be friendship, this could be family, it could be anything, but obviously we're talking about dating or being married. Fruit of the Spirit and gifts of the Spirit. The fruit of the Spirit is proof of the Spirit. So if you have the Spirit with you, you should have the love, the joy, the peace, the patience, all that. The other one is the gifts of the Spirit are used to edify the body of Christ, okay? I believe that this is my homework request for everybody, is that you would ask the Lord to give you fruits, or give you the fruit of the Spirit, and to get, or maybe give you opportunities to use and show the fruit of the Spirit. Because if you have the Spirit, you should have the fruit. But also to give you gifts of the Spirit, that He would literally give you the gift of encouragement, the gift of generosity, the gift of prophecy, whatever it might be, so that you can edify your spouse. And because if they're in the same church as you, then you are edifying the church and the body of Christ. But I think that goes so overlooked. Like, I've never thought about that till literally right now. But to ask the Lord, because we expect to use the gift of prophecy like in the midst of a crowd in a church, but not with our own spouse in the house. Like, hey, I hear the Lord saying, edify them, lift them up, encourage them. When you seek to encourage rather than to figure out, you'll probably get into less fights, and like, you probably will like keep your partner, your spouse, your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is, from wanting to fight with you. Like, oh my gosh, like they're always so kind. They're always looking for something from the Lord for me. And I think that's huge.
It is huge, and it's necessary in a godly marriage. You want it, trust me.
That's your homework.
Do your homework.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Audio cut.